Okay,
Welcome.
I think that says we're recording. Okay, this week we're doing Spring Security. We're going to take the transaction screen that we have, and we're going to protect that and only allow registered users to log into the transaction screen. And we're going to use Spring Security. Now, the the primary change you got to make to the build.gradle is this line right here. You got to add the Spring Boot starter for security, and that's all we have to do this week for the build.gradle file. We're just adding security. Everything else remains the same. I mentioned that to start with. Here are the assignment. We've got. I gave you all these HTML files this week so that I didn't have to copy and paste them into the document. But we got a login screen. There's Marwa. We got a login screen. We have a registration screen, and we have a log out success screen. And then there's changes to the menu and to the user screen to for these new items. You also have a new SQL files for data and schema, and what they do. The new schema file has the two additional tables for users and for roles, ROLES, and the user table has a username and an encrypted password. So it's not very easy for you to add new users through the uh, the data.sql. Right, Josh? I thought about dropping the roles, but I thought it was worthwhile to leave it in here because it shows how you can this ID here, of course, is the unique identifier for this table. The user ID down here is the key of the user table, and the role is either admin role or user role, and the only admin is me. Here's the data table, data.sql. In addition to the four transactions that we had previously, here's the inserting my user into the uh, the user table, and here are the two roles that I insert into the roles table, admin and user. The first number is the unique identifier. The second number is the user ID, which of course refers to the user ID number one, numero uno. That's me. So you got to replace these two files so that you have these two items in the user and role files. Okay. So back down to here, you want to download the attached HTML files and store them in the templates folder. They all go in the templates folder. Um, the and then download the SQL files and replace the ones that you have in the project now. And then we need to write a web security configure adapter to define the security rules. And I'll show that to you. be up here in config. This is the key to security. This class, first of all, you have an enable web security annotation, and this web security config extends this interface. Web security configurer adapter. Let's see if I can cheat a little bit here. We auto wire in the user details service, which we'll look at it. We'll have a bean for the password encoder class, so that Spring can inject that security routine into your program here. There are several different password encoders. This is one of them. And then we have the configure global. This is an auto wire, again, so that Spring can inject this authentication manager builder into your program. And then it says auth.userdetailsservice.password-encoder, that. The password encoder that was brought in up here. This is setting the service to find the user in the database and setting the password encoder. Okay, but the rules themselves are down here in this configure method. Too far, back up. Okay, first of all, it disables this CSRF, which in a production system you probably wouldn't do, but for our simple exercises and to make things easier, we disable that. And that's defined in the book. I don't remember what it means, but it's in chapter 13. It has to do with trying to hack into the site and appear to be a different user, different system than you. Cross system something. It's just a protection mechanism, and we turned it off, but you wouldn't ordinarily do that in production. So then we start defining rules. The first one, we want to authorize requests, and we use this this HTTP security element that's passed into us here, and we use the authorized request class on it. We use there's different kind of matchers that you could use. Ant matchers are some of the simplest ones, and this says that if it's the pattern, the URL pattern is slash, which is nothing past the 8080, or it's a slash login, or slash logout, or slash register, then you permit all users to use those 4 functions. Okay? And actually, Josh, it probably should have a home in here too, shouldn't it? As we discovered this afternoon. That's comma. So let's add a home to the list. And this just basically says that, you know, anybody can use these screens. Okay, then we say that we authorize access to the transaction screen to anyone who has any role of role user or role admin. And of course, you saw that I have that access, but as you register people into the system, they will get a role record created for role user. And so this says that only people that have these roles can access this screen, this screen. The next one I put in here to kind of show you how we can really kind of protect things for an administrator. This is the H2 console. I think I've shown that to you before. I have, and I will show it to you in a few minutes if you like, and that has to have a role admin. So if you're going to try to use the H2 console, you got to log in with my user ID. And then if, let's see, when the user has logged in and let's see, authorized requests and exception handling, access denied page. So basically that means if it gets down this far and it's not one of these pages and you're not logged in as one of these for the transaction page and you're not the admin going to the admin page, then you're going to end up on the 403 page. And then down here, this is saying if we, actually this says that if you enter the wrong user ID or don't have access to that function, whatever. Excuse me, I ate dinner too fast. So I'm belching and that's not good. That calls this 403 page, which is sort of an error page. Here, this is authorized requests and and you're doing a .form login. Then what it's going to do, the login up there displays the login screen. This down here is the one that it processes it, and the login process URL is this Spring Security check. This processes the login page, and that is this states what the login page is, and it says if the login is successful, it can go to the transaction page. If it's not successful, and it's going to put out a login with an error equal true. And it says that the username parameter is username and the password parameter is password. And I don't know what those last two are doing here, because we got the CSRF up at the top, and they had the H2 console up there. I don't know. Cut and paste it. I've worked on this lesson for so many hours. And finally, it says, and if it's a logout process, and this is the request for that, and if it's successful, which it's going to be, because if you say log out, it's going to log you out, then it's going to send you back to the home page, which is the one with the start button on it. So those are basically our rules, our security rules, I call them. And this is fairly technical and so forth, so I, wanted to give it all to you. And then down here, this is another bean for the, oh, I bet you that's not used anymore. Return in-memory token repository implementation. Interesting. Because that persistent token repository. I don't think that ever gets reused. I really don't. I don't know why it's it doesn't tell me it's not referenced. Generate missed test methods. I don't know. I don't believe this is necessary, but at this point in time, I wouldn't leave it out. It'll just cause you grief, maybe, if you leave it out. So just, this is all in the document, the instructions. So use it. And that's the web security configure adapter defining the security roles. Then you'll need a login controller to handle the login and logout and /403 requests. And they're all in this instruction document here. It's all spelled out for you. And then you'll need a registration controller to handle the /register request. It verifies that the two entered passwords are equal, the password in the confirm field, and that the user is not already registered. I ran into a situation while I was testing where I registered a user and then turned around and registered that user again. It took it just fine. So I put in that check to it. When you register a user, it goes out and accesses the user file to see if there's already a record there, and if it is, it's an error. And then it saves the user and the role entries into the database. You'll need a registration form, which defines the registration screen entries. That is just a an entity, kind of like transaction. Transaction entity backs up the transaction screen, or a transaction. Well, this is the registration form. It'll have a username and a password, and then the duplicate password to confirm it. And then this routine, okay, I give up. To user. Oh, there must be some more on that line that we don't see. Yeah. Okay. This is like a get user, I guess. This returns a new user with the username and the password encoded password. And you after the password is entered into the registration screen or into the login screen, it does not, there's no way, that's not a correct statement. It is certainly extremely difficult to decrypt the password or decode the password. There's not any code in here that will do that. So what it does is when you enter the password into the login screen or into the registration screen, it encodes that password and stores it in the file. In the case of the login, it's going to take the password you enter, encode it, and compare it with the encrypted one in the file. So there's not anything in here that will like display the password for you, because it's always encoded after it's received from the screen. But this is just the entity that backs up the registration screen, which is this HTML right here, registration.html. Okay, then you'll need a user and entity roles, which again are fairly simple. You say this is an entity, the table is users, and again, this is the ID. This is just like the transaction page was previously. The generated value is identity, and they're referring, of course, to this ID field. And here's the username, and then here's the string that's a encrypted password. And this column name right here is what it's actually called in the database, and this is the name by which your program knows it. That's what a column name annotation does, is relates what the table knows it by, what the database knows it by, and what your program knows it by. And then here is the constructor for a user. Just takes the username and the encrypted password in and creates a user with it. And role is not that much different. The table name is roles. It has an ID. The string is the role, and this column is the user ID, which is the key of the user table. So that's the role and entity classes. Then you need to create a user and role repository classes. And again, they're about as difficult as the transaction repository was. You interface user repository extends CRUD repository, and we put in one class here, user find by username, and we pass it a string. The role repository is the same. The difference is that it returns a list of type role, and you find it by user ID. Okay. And then the other class that you have to create is the user detail service, and it's under service. This is new. It implements, okay, a second, where is, it implements user details service. This is the user detail service implementation. It auto wires in the user repository and the role repository. The this method, user details, overrides the method in user detail service, and I'm sorry, it returns a user details, but it's called load user by username, and it can throw a username not found exception. And so basically it uses the user repository and that find by username and returns the user. And if user is null at this point, then it throws a username not found exception and puts out this message: the user was not found. And then it retrieves by user ID in the role repository a list of all the role names. There can be one or two roles, and if the role names is not equal to null, then for each role we create this granted authority object and add each of them to the grant list, and that's how the security rules get at the roles, is through this grant list. And then finally down here we return the user details, and I don't know why that is a fully defined path name. That could be in an include. But it's basically the user, and it does a user.get name and a user.get encrypted password and that grant list. So that's what this this service returns, is the username, the encrypted password, and the grant list to back into Spring Security so that they can use it. Again, all this code is in the instruction document. And then there's a little utility method that I was looking at this afternoon, and it doesn't do an awful lot. All right, come on. It just has a toString method which returns the username and the authorities as a string, and that's used, I think, when you log in and you don't have the authority for that page or something. The error page uses this to return information. So that's all this is used for. And that's basically it. You know, like I said, everything is in this PDF. So you check out, you highlight the remote lesson 12 branch and check it out as lesson 13. You change the application name in the properties file. You change the README file, and there's the starter security that you have to add to the build Gradle. Here's that web security config class. And in the transaction controller, you add home to the get mapping on line 32. Let's close some of these. Close all. I want to check something. Yeah. I think that's the one step you missed, Josh, right? You have to add home to this mapping right here.
Right.
So they do the same thing, whether you say localhost :8080 or you say localhost :8080/home. It's going to return it's going to take the app name, which it gets out of the properties file, and says put out the home screen. So that's, you have to the home screen is new to this. Then here's the login controller. Again, if you put in a request for a GET request for login, it's going to return the login page. If you put in a GET request for logout, it's going to basically, it's going to log you out and go to logouts, return the logout success. And if a 403 is requested internally, it puts out this, goes through here. The access denied is the method, and it just puts out this string, hi, so-and-so, you do not have permission to access this page, and returns the 403 page, which it substituted this information in. And then here's the reg controller. Again, it's all right there. It's not that big. On the register, this is the post mappings. if you slash register, it's a get. It displays the registration screen. Once the screen is filled with data, it comes back in as a post request. And here it checks to see if the password field that you entered and the confirm field that you entered are equal. If it not, it puts out this message that the password is not match. Boy, that should be does, I think, or do. Passwords do. Well, that's a PDF. I can't change it. It should be passwords do not match, not is. And then it checks to see if it takes the username that you entered on the registration screen and goes into the user repo and finds by username. And if it's not null, it puts out the message that the user is already registered and returns that error screen 403. Then here we say user repo.save the 2-user password encoder, and then it creates a new role user and with that user ID and saves it to the role repo and returns the redirect to the login screen. Because when you register the user, then it shows you to the login screen to log in. That's what that is. Then you got, here's the registration form. I showed you that a while ago. That goes in the entity package, very short. Here's the role. There's the user. There's the role repository and the user, and there's the user repository. And then here's a user details service implementation. Again, you can basically just cut that and paste it right into a new class. And then here's this little web-util static method toString that goes in that in the utils package. And then in the fragments folder, you change the header to make it look like this. And basically what we're doing here is you're adding the register and either log in or log out. Is that what that's? If the user is logged in, it displays a log out in the menu. If the user is not logged in, there's no reason to have a log out up there. So that's what that is. The request.user principal is not equal to null. That says you have a logged in user. So you put log out into the menu. And then basically that's the whole thing. Again, I have you run the tests. Well, we didn't change any tests this time, but again, it goes through the load context to make sure that everything, all your beans and your auto wires and everything match up. That's very important in Spring. That's the first thing it does, go out and read all the beans and auto wires them and finds all the at controllers and at services and at repositories, etc., and brings and instantiates those and puts them into the Spring container. And that's what load context does, is it brings all that stuff in and ties it all together, and then it's ready to start your application. So I always have you run the test first to make sure that it can do that load context successfully, because there's no reason to try to run the whole thing if that one test doesn't pass. And if that passes, then you run the class, and then you again click on the version control window, and it says there should be 25 changed files. I don't know whether that's absolutely correct, but that's what I had at the time I was creating these. Whoa, too far. And then you click on the green check mark to commit them. Change the commit message to commit changes for lesson 13. Then you click on the VCS menus, get push option, and click on the lesson 12 that's underlined and change it to the lesson 12 to lesson 13. Press enter, and that will activate the push button. And then you push your changes to the lesson 13 branch in the remote repository, and you submit the assignment, including the GitHub link to your repository. So, and I was going to show you, that's not it. Somewhere I have a screen. It doesn't matter, we'll just take one. And oh, I gotta move it over where you can see it. Okay, hang on. Where'd it go? There it is. Come on. There it comes. Come on, you can do it. There. So when you say localhost 8080, it comes up with your home page. You notice it has a register here, but it doesn't have a log out. And the application name is changed. And we press the start button, and it goes out and says, well, you know, you haven't logged in. And you'll notice that I hard-coded the information down here for me. So we type in Bill and password 123 and press submit. And my password manager gets in the way. And then that allows it to come to the transaction screen. Notice that now that I've logged in, the log out appears in the menu. Okay, this screen itself didn't change. It won't change. If you press log out, it logs you out and sends you back to the start screen. If you click register, you can put in a name and a password, which I just put in PW1. I know. I don't know whether y'all can see, but my password manager tells me that's not a good password. And I'm just going to show you, I'm going to say PW2. And there's my password manager in the way again. And it comes back and says passwords is not match. Very poor English there. So if we go back to register and we do it right this time, we say Josh and PW1, and hit register. Okay, it registered Josh. Notice it didn't list him down here. This stuff is hard coded, so it doesn't try to list everybody that's in the user file. But so now if we type in, come on, Josh and PW1 and submit. This Josh is now a registered user in the system. And in fact, if we go to the register screen again and I type in Josh, and I'll put in PW2 this time and PW2 and try to register Josh, it'll tell me the user is already registered. So that way it doesn't write two records into the user file for Josh. But obviously, because the login appears here, Josh is still logged in. So we can go to the transaction screen. The other thing I want to show you, since I have Josh logged in, is if I put in the H2 console here. Hi, Josh. You do not have permission to access this page because you have that's not very good. It says username : role user. Okay, well, a few little glitches here, but basically this just says you have to have an admin user to use the H2 console. So if I log out and we go to the login screen and type in Bill and this ultra secret password here, password 123, and submit. And now I can go up here and go to the H2 console, and there it is. It comes up if you're the administrator. And if we connect to it, you'll notice we have a users and roles and transactions. Here's the transactions, the 4 transactions that are loaded. If we look at the user file, it should have 2 users in there, Bill and Josh. And again, you'll see it's the passwords are encrypted, so you can't just look in the database and figure out what our passwords are. And then the role file should have 3 records in it, 2 of them for user ID 1, which is Bill, and 1 for user ID 2, which is Josh. Okay. That's about all I know to show you. You have any questions? If you click on home, it brings you to this page. I'm still logged in, so I can show the transaction page. If I click the home, it takes me back to the start screen. So, questions? No questions. Well, before y'all got on, I asked Josh a question, and I preface it by saying that he was probably not a very good person to ask because he's always the first person to turn in the assignment. So I'll ask the rest of you, is this too easy? Am I basically giving you a step-by-step instructions on how to do these, or do you feel this is beneficial from the standpoint of you are learning something by cutting and pasting or typing in the code and getting it to work and seeing what I did, etc., to create a real application?
I can't speak for anybody else, but even with your step by step, you know from experience, I still manage to mess things up. So
Well, you're not the only one. I
not
mean,
easy for me.
even Josh needed a little help today.
Mhm.
So no, it's not too easy. It helps, but there still are things that we don't know, and so when certain errors pop up, we have no way of, like the one I had on my last assignment, I never would have found that error without you.
Actually, for me too, still have some error, and I need your help even with the step by step.
Okay, well, you know, if another instructor were to look at this closely, they would probably tell me that you know I'm like giving you the assignment and you just copy it down and turn it in, and that's basically correct. But you know, I'm trying to teach you some of what I consider to be fairly advanced coding here. There, this is not terribly advanced, but it's advanced for you. But
Right.
and I think you can see how we are creating a an application here that compared to other online applications you've used, this is just a minimal application, but it's still got a lot of moving parts that you've got to uh, piece together and put them together correctly for it to work. And I think that in order to get through all of these topics on Spring and to give y'all a chance to, you know, come out the other end and have some understanding of Spring, I need to give you this level of detail and have you put it in there and get it to work, and hopefully you're understanding some stuff as you get it to work, that it's not just words on the page now. So anyway.
I think Professor too, if another professor looked at it, of course they would see it that way because they have a lot more experience than we do. But I can tell you, you going through it step by step, and I'm still going, oh dear Lord, this is gonna take forever. And I think if we didn't do it this way, how long would it really take us to complete this level of an assignment? We could. I don't think there's any way we could do it in a week because a lot of times we still can't do it in a week.
Well, I'd be willing to bet you a significant amount of money. I probably shouldn't put this on the recording. Okay, recording is going off.